Talk CS. Today we want to preview the Rangers San Jose Sharks matchup. Not necessarily a matchup that has big implications like the Winnipeg Jets game on Tuesday or Monday? Tuesday. My days are thrown off because of Veterans Day. We have Max Miller with us, covers the San Jose Sharks as a beat reporter for the Hockey News. And I think Ranger fans are eager to know. After that Chelsea Piers practice, Arthur Staple mentioned how Gerard Gallant would be smiling at Barclay Goodrow playing on the first line. But that's not where it all ended. He also was vocal about how things ended in New York. What what do you make of his return to MSG?
Yeah, he wrote the same thing as I did. I mean, the words said he wasn't happy with how things went down, how things were handled were his words. I think the fans will love him. I don't see a reason to boo him. Gallant would be smiling at Ryan Warsofsky, putting him on the top line with Macklin Celebrini, Tyler Toffoli. When I talked to Macklin today, they said they're going to try and set him up. But I think it's going to be an interesting return. Obviously, alternate captain for the entirety of his time there. Scored a big goal in overtime against the Panthers last season. So I think he worked hard. I think he was just a casualty of his contract. So things, the way things went down, I don't blame him for being upset. I mean, he's a longtime veteran, Cup champ. I mean, he deserves some respect. But I mean, he said it himself. It's just the nature of the business. He's over it. He's happy to be a Shark again. So I think the fans will enjoy it. We'll see if he gets a video. I wouldn't expect him not to. I mean, he was a pretty good Ranger. A lot of people loved him there, whether it was on the team or the fans and whatnot. So I think it'll be fun.
And what has he brought to the Sharks lineup, I think, in the positive manner of his veteran leadership?
Yeah, I mean, he's a penalty killer, first and foremost. I mean, the Sharks have a decent penalty kill this year. They had about a week spurt where they were not great, but he's on the second power play unit. I mean, he's going to work hard. He's going to forecheck. He's going to hit. He's going to stand up for his teammates. I mean, the Sharks are a really young team. Guys like Henry Thrun, Jack Thompson, and then Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini. I mean, Eklund's still young. Zetterlund's still young. So he's showing them, and, Barclay, and you could loop him in this part with Tyler Toffoli. He's showing the young team how to be an NHL player. And that's something that a lot of, young players need to learn. And you see with Nick Foligno in Chicago, with Connor Bedard. I'm not sure who did it with Edmonton. I know Benoit Pouliot was a former Ranger. He was on McDavid's line to start the year. I mean, there's all these instances where you see veterans joining young teams to help them learn. Sometimes it's quicker than others, but just learning how to be an NHL team. And he's also an NHL body, which is something the Sharks didn't have last year. They were not. They weren't NHL team, but something David Quinn, former Rangers coach, so many former Rangers here today. Something he used to say is we don't have enough NHL quality bodies on this roster. And that's no slight against anybody with the Sharks organization or anything like that. Injuries were a part of it. They just kind of lacked quality. They have added that quality with him and Tyler Foley as well as others.
And they've been doing better in the last 5 games. What have you noticed in the last 5 games that the team has improved on? As you mentioned, very young. They have an influx of some veterans on the team now. What has changed in the last few games, especially on this trip against New Jersey and Philadelphia?
They're learning how to play structured hockey. I think with David Quinn, that was gone. I mean, there was the swarm defense. Right now, they're learning to play a system. The biggest issue right now with them is their breakouts. When they turn the puck over, they can't. Their downfall is their breakouts. Their defense is not good enough to recover from breakdowns on their breakouts. But offensively, their instincts are really good. I think for the young players, especially a guy like Will Smith, the pace of play. Will Smith was not known as a fast player at BC. He thought fast. He could get to places where he needed to be when he needed to be. But going from BC to the NHL is another level of speed. So he's still learning that. And then just the overall rigors of ups and downs of the season, right? Like, you're not going to be perfect every night. So you saw that early with their 9-game losing streak, but they're starting to really implement the systems that Coach Warsofsky has really tried to do. And you're starting to see that happening game to game on a more consistent basis. The last step for them to really be competitive every night is to do it for a full 60 minutes, right? Against the Devils, they did it for 48, 50 minutes, and then they were under siege. But it didn't feel like, oh my God, here we go again. It felt like, okay, here comes a big push from the Devils, and it was one of those bigger pushes. But it didn't feel like, oh, well, they stink there. That's why they're giving up. No, it was a big push for the Devils down 1-0. You knew it was going to happen. It was a little bigger than I think they wanted, but they're not just rolling over and dying like they used to.
That's a great thing for the organization overall. And I think for the players as well to learn from, as we mentioned earlier, a lot of veteran leadership there. And the two players you mentioned, Macklin Celebrini, even Eklund, Will Smith, they're those new players. It's like the new toys. What makes those three players special?
Well, Celebrini is a magician with the puck. I mean, we all knew he had a really well-rounded two-way game. He's a little bit more electric, as the only way I can describe it, for offense than I thought he would be. I don't want to compare him to McDavid skating, but the style is very similar. Very good edges, very quick crossovers, and hands are as fast as lightning. So the guy is really hard. He invites contact, kind of similar to McDavid. If you hit him, he's going to bounce off you and go around you. And he's been fun to watch. As you know, Will Smith, you mentioned there. I mean, I mentioned him before, right? The pace of play, you could see the offensive instincts. He can, in a minute, in a moment, he can snap a shot over goalie's glove or blocker and go bar down like it's nothing, or he can make a perfect seam pass. He just needs to catch up to this speed. As for Eklund, the last guy you watched, don't forget about Fabian Zetterlund. They're on the same line. They're best buddies. Eklund, the last two games especially, has started to really show up and take over games. I mean, if you remember back to his draft class, I mean, he was considered a borderline top 5 prospect. Do I think he'll live up to that? Probably not. But do I think he'll live up to the 7th overall pick? He could get there. He, along with Zetterlund and Granlund, or as Sharks fans like to call that line the Lund line, they finished the season together last year, and this year they've got put back together and they've dominated the last 2 games. Eklund was asked by his coach to impact the game more, and so far through those 2 games since that message, he's passed that with flying colors. So he's been fun to watch. He's been physical. His pass behind against the grain, Patrick Kane style, right? He'll go one way behind the net, pass it back the other way. That's his patented thing. No more Patrick Kane. That's Eklund's thing. He's fun to watch, and don't forget about Zetterlund. That guy's got a shot. I would argue a top 25 shot in the league. He's got that quick of a release and that hard of a shot.
There are players on the Sharks team, and I think that's notable, obviously, for how the Rangers have played defense in their last few games. And on this road trip last year, it seemed like the Sharks were on a roll. Eklund had the overtime goal against the Islanders. Do you sense that there's something different as the teams played the first 2 games of this trip and now going into New York in their next few?
I think this whole season's been different than last year. I remember I was on the trip last year too when they went to New Jersey. That was their first road win. They won, I think, 6-3 or something, and then they played the Rangers, and it was a blowout. I mean, I think it finished 6-5, but Panarin had a hat trick, and the Rangers, it was what it was. And you mentioned that Islander game. That was a comeback. I mean, they didn't play well that game either, but this is just, you have similar bodies. But this is a different team with different coaching, right? You have Warsawski, who was the defense coach last year, and then Brian Weisman, who ran the forwards, who's back running the forwards and power play again this year. But Warsawski is not David Quinn. He's running a completely new system. He said he's wiped that slate clean. He said, quote, you need to shed the scar tissue of the last few seasons. And that's not just at David Quinn. That's just the last 5 years since they've been missing the playoffs and bad. He's trying to reset the way these players think, and that takes time. We're starting to see those colors, and we're starting to see the success of the players because, after all, you and I have talked about it this whole time right now. They're young. It's going to take time for them to learn the NHL game, and then you have to completely flip what systems they've been running the last 2 years from these young kids. So that's a lot to take in for a team that is constantly changing bodies. So it's different this year for sure. But it's the way I like to describe it, and I don't mean this is they're watchable. Last year was just not good in every aspect. It wasn't good. Yeah, the wins were fun at times, but from the quality of play, I mean, it wasn't good. This year, they can hang with teams. You mentioned it there, and I said it too. They have bodies this year. They have quality bodies this year. So it's been fun to watch. And if you watch a Sharks game, and I think tomorrow night against the Sharks and Rangers, I think that could be a highly entertaining game because of how the Rangers have defended lately. I did attend the game. I'm in the area. We had a day off. I did go to the game yesterday and thought the Rangers played better than what they had been, but defensively, they still made big mistakes. Now the Sharks are a team that can capitalize on those mistakes rather than in the last few years. They haven't been able to. Players Celebrini, Toffoli, Eklund, Zetterlund, Granlund, who's been on fire. They can make teams pay for that, which makes them a quality team. And they're definitely going to take it to some teams as well.
What's your score prediction for tonight?
The score prediction, I think the Rangers do come away with a victory. I think it'll be like a 5-3 with the 5th goal being an empty netter. I think both teams will struggle to defend. The biggest thing that the Sharks struggle to defend is the transition defense, right? If they turn the puck over, they do their best to mark the right people, but they're not. This is where their skill and their level of play kind of declines. Is they're not good enough to recover, especially the defensemen. They're just not good enough to recover. So I'm going to go 5-3 Rangers with the 5th goal being an empty net. So 4-3, and then the empty netter makes it 5-3.
Thanks for joining me, Max, and looking forward to tonight's contest. Best of luck at MSG. It is different to be in that building, I'm sure, for you growing up a Ranger fan.
Yeah, growing up a Ranger fan, obviously that's no more. My grandfather worked there for 60 years, so it's got a special place for me. But we got to be impartial tomorrow, so here we go. Should be fun.
Thanks, Max.